Welcome, everyone. This is Michael Gibbs, and I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Careers, and I'm here to help you build your best cloud computing career. Personally, I've been working in technology now for well over 25 years, and I've been helping others get their first tech job or get promoted in tech for more than 2 decades. And I want to help you get cloud hired, cloud promoted, so you can build your absolute best career. And that's why we come online, realistically speaking, 3 times a week for free and answer your questions. Because we know when it comes to career building, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and time equals money. We have seen so many people meander around in all these different directions, learning other people's careers for so long that we felt we had to come online 3 times a week to help you. I've been helping people optimize their career now for 2 decades, and I want to help you. Before we begin answering today's questions and answers, let's talk about a few things that we do and have coming up for you to help you. We have a completely free subnetting and BGP workshop next week. It's going to be on 2 separate days, and here's the reason. The cloud is nothing more than a network and a data center, regardless of all the fancy names the cloud providers come up with. And if you don't know networking, you don't know the cloud. And the IP addressing scheme that you choose is to determine whether your systems will work or whether they will crash. And I've seen it and been fixing systems for more than 25 years in networking. So we're going to do a subnetting workshop because that's the foundation of the IP addressing scheme. And then when it comes to routing and switching and networking, you've got to know BGP, and it's not covered anywhere, including the AWS Advanced Networking, which is super easy. But BGP is a critical skill. And unless you're a CCIE like me, you probably don't have a lot of experience with it. So we're going to do a BGP workshop next week to help you with your cloud computing career. And for those of you that desire to get AWS certified, guess what? We're back with another free AWS bootcamp where we start at the very basics and beginning, and we'll give you the entire Certified Solution Architect Associate and then some. And our free AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate bootcamp, which is going to be the week after next, it's going to be so much fun. We'll get together, we'll answer questions, we'll talk. We're going to run it like a real classroom. It's not going to be videos with nobody there. We'll talk for 20 minutes and then answer 10 minutes of questions. Real classroom experience, because I want you guys to become great. All of you, I want every one of you to become great, get cloud hired, cloud promoted, and accelerate your career. So we're going to do that completely free for you in 2 weeks. Now, next Thursday, we're back to our How to Get Your First Cloud Job webinar. Come register. The link is in the description below, as well as the chat box. And it is for all these things that we're talking about, by the way. And on this webinar, you'll come and I'll tell you how to get your first cloud job. I'll tell you how to leverage your life experience, even if it's a different industry, to convince the hiring manager you're ready. I'll show you exactly what the hiring manager wants and the perfect candidates you can get hired. I'll tell you what needs to be on your resume. I'll tell you how to skip HR, which is going to auto block you when you don't have experience so you can get hired. It's going to be a great time. And I'll tell you everything you need to learn, study, certifications, all of it completely free. We'll present for about an hour, and then my team and I will answer your questions live on Zoom for about an hour. We're going to have a full conversation and be able to talk to each other, and it's going to be great fun. What else? We've extended our 4th of July discount until the 11th. We've done it. I was out sick with COVID for a couple of weeks, and I wanted to make sure you all have the best opportunity to maximize your career. So we've extended our 4th of July discount. The reason we do these question and answers, the cloud computing career training question and answer sessions, is maybe you desire to become a cloud architect or a solutions architect or an enterprise architect or a network architect or a cloud engineer. Whatever the goal of your career, cloud architect, solution architect, cloud engineer, it doesn't matter. I will help you get to your goals. Ask me how to get there, and we will do everything that we can to help you build your best career. So that is why we are here, to help you get cloud hired, cloud promoted, and build your best cloud architect, solution architect, enterprise architect, network engineer, cloud engineer. I just want to help you have a great tech career. And that's why we do all these things. So if you're here, ask some questions. Please ask some questions in the chat box, because that's why me and my team do what we do, so we can help you in your career. While we're waiting for some questions, give me a hashtag, or just tell me where you're actually at in the chat box. I see a bunch of people on here. Where are you located? I can tell you one thing. I'm in Port St. Lucie, Florida. I spent about a decade in Palm Beach, Florida, which I really liked, but got pretty busy there. I retired. I came out to Port St. Lucie, where it's nice and calm and quiet. Love it. over here because it's nice and quiet. And then I came out of retirement to build this program to help all of you get cloud hired. But that is what it is. I love getting people hired. It's my favorite thing in the world. Okay, we've got somebody in Nigeria. I love that. Eddie Patrick, good to see you, cloud hired. Omar Weaver, cloud hired. Klaus, cloud hired. Here to win, cloud hired. Nigeria, I love that. I love to see how far people are coming. Here to win. Great question. Do you think cloud careers might be affected by stagflation and a recession? The answer is yes, but some are going to get better, I think, and some are going to get worse. So I'd like you to think about certain careers. So for example, in a recession, here's what happens. Typically speaking, organizations buy less things. And because organizations buy less things, other businesses have lower sales. And as business has lower sales or top line revenue, they have to find a way to survive. And they have two choices: increase sales or cut expenses. Now, the reality is in bad times, the organizations have to do both. So what happens is when the times get rough and we have to do layoffs, some careers actually get better, and we're going to talk about it, and some actually get worse. And some are what's called ripe for outsourcing, and we'll talk about that as well. So let's talk about this. So certain careers, such as sales careers, cloud architect careers, solution architect careers, they get better, and here's the reason why. I'm a cloud architect. I go meet with a client. We have some discussions. I help sell a $300 million cloud solution over the next 3 years. And I brought in $300 million of revenue to the company. I'm getting paid and the company needs me. So architect careers, sales careers, etc., any of those kind of things, yes, they really do good. And they get better in times of stagflation or a recession for a rule, because we are the problem solvers. We are the money generators. Now, which careers get really bad? Well, there's certain careers that I recommend you never do. Admin work, like sysadmin work, I recommend you stay out of that. Help desk work, I've always recommended people stay out of that. There's no reason to do it anyway, unless you love help desk. I didn't start at help desk, and none of my students do. Programming careers and back-end operations and engineering, they get cut fast in a recession. And let me explain to you why. If I have to increase sales and I have to cut expenses. So back-end engineering people are expenses. Frontline salespeople are revenue generators. So here's what happens. Programmers cut. And here's the reason why. I can hire a better programmer in Bangalore, India for $15 an hour than I can in the US for $60 an hour. So now I got to cut expenses, cut the programming, because it doesn't matter where it's done. There's brilliant people in India, Pakistan, Africa, certain parts of Europe where the cost of living is low. So certain skills like programming in a recession, poof, outsourced, laid off, and hired in a cheaper cost of living part of the world where we've got some great people that are super motivated, super educated, and super capable that are grateful for a job. So programming careers. Now, sysadmin roles are sysops roles, which are maintenance roles, which we tell you never to do, unless you love those kind of things, unless you like being stuck behind the computer. And here's the reason why. My cloud architect brings in a couple $100 million bucks. So we love them. The people in the back end doing the sysadmin work, again, outsourced and laid off. Or here's the alternative. They can be replaced instantly. One DevOps engineer can replace 50 cloud admins with the infrastructure as code. The one DevOps engineer can do what the cloud admins do. And so we don't need them anyway. So I recommend you stay away from sysops for those reasons. Now, cloud engineering, that's a tough one. See, the architects are going to be in greater demand. Cloud engineers, normally speaking, you'd lay off the engineers or hire them from somewhere else because they don't bring in money. But as a rule, the network in the data center is pretty expensive to maintain. And the cloud is generally cheaper. So the cloud engineers, the cloud architects, and I think the DevOps engineers are going to still be fine. Sales positions are still be fine, but back-end stuff, Like the kind, especially in the back end stuff for the people that get a gazillion one certifications that are doing a little of everything. That stuff gets crushed in a recession. And in a recession, you need people that are really capable, not jack of all trades and a master of none. So we're not so worried about it because our architects are getting hired every day right now, even in the stagflation environment, which it looks like we have here. Are we entering a recession? It depends on the economic indicator you look at. Today's information was pretty darn solid. Today's job report. Then again, consumer prices and producer prices and fuel prices are pretty darn scary. Raising interest rates, which sucks money out of the economy, is pretty darn scary, but it's necessary to combat the 8.6 inflation rate. So, there's that. So here's what I can tell you here to win. Do you know who doesn't get laid off? The people that are most capable and most liked. So here's your career agility skills, sales skills, executive presence, leadership skills, emotional intelligence, social skills, CXO relevancy. You have that, and energy, enthusiasm, and passion, and you're generally good. Now, here to win, in my 20 years of career coaching, I've been through 20 layoffs in companies, and I've never been laid off. And in my 20 years of career coaching, I've only had one person ever get laid off. Now, he was a really good kid. He had a 6-figure plus, severance package, and he had a $300,000 job within a week because he had all these agility skills. And that was in one of the last internet crashes. Actually, it was during the real estate crash, because something. But still, the point was, if you have the right skills, you should be good to go. Great question here to win. And if you got a little more on that, I'd love to answer it. And Chris, we can bring in the next one. Domas, wow, I wonder if you're Greek or Lithuanian. I speak Greek at home by your name. Good morning, day, evening, night. I like that. I like to ask, which path do you think is best if you wanted to go for contracting freelancing instead of working for a company? Well, Domas, I don't know why you would want to do that. And here's the reason why. Look, I've done some contracting, and look, in the old days, in 1996, when the CCIE was getting $110 an hour on contract, I was like, yeah, woohoo, let's do some contracting. And it was fun. But a cloud architect working for the right company can earn $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, which is probably more than you're going to make on your own. So there's that. Now, what is contracting, freelancing? Consulting. The architect roles are generally the place where you're going to be able to do the most consulting, and here's the reason why. People say, I want to be an architect. How much? Which certifications again? I'm like, you're missing the concept. An architect is a business executive. We design, present, and sell. We are 50% tech and 50% or more non-tech. So these roles, the architect role by very nature is a consultant. So what do I do as an architect? Customer calls me and they says, hey, wait, we have a problem in our business or a challenge in our business. And I go meet with the CEO, the CFO, the CIO, the CTO. I ask some questions about the business. I analyze the financial statements. I look at what industry analysts state. Then I look at what the best competitors in the world are doing. And then I try to determine the optimal end state. And then I say, what tech do I need to make it? Virtual machines, containers, firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, databases, the kind of database, etc. And then when I'm done, that's my architecture. I go to the cloud and say, okay, well, AWS calls a virtual machine elastic compute cloud, so I'm going to swap out these virtual machines with this. But I'm still, for my Azure thing, because I'm always going to do two clouds, Azure's going to call it a virtual machine. I then translate my tech into things, document it, write it up, and go back to the customer. I present it to the customer. I negotiate a deal with the customer, and I sell it to the customer. And then, Domas, I'm gone. I'm off. And I'm on to the next customer. So the cloud architect role is probably your best role to do some consulting, because by nature, we cloud architects are consultants. We are not hands-on techies. We never touch the technology like people do, like people think we do. And that's why people can't get cloud architect jobs, because they get a billion certifications which teach them the name of the service and how to configure that. Oh, wait. We design, present, and sell. Very different. So the answer is architect is probably the best role to do remotely with the highest pay. Great question, Domas. So Love that name. Ends in an AS. I'm thinking Greek or Lithuanian. I'm from Greece, or at least my family's from Greece. So very cool. Oh, Lithuania. There you go, Domas. So cool. Hey, Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. When I was looking at some cloud solution architect job descriptions, and you see Kubernetes, Terraform, CI/CD. Well, here's the thing, Gwen. We architects design, present, and sell, and we never touch the technology. So here's the thing. I've never been hired for a job where I had more than 10% of the things on the job description. Architects do not do CI/CD. We do not do DevOps. We do not do Terraform ever. And we never touch the technology. In fact, when it's gotten so bad out there with these job descriptions, the two things happen. First is every year, well, a couple times a year, and I don't really drink, but I occasionally twice a year, I'll have some Macallan 25 with some friends, and we all get on Zoom, and we actually look at cloud architect job descriptions, and we're like, hey, look at this as a joke. Look at this as a joke. Look at this as a joke. And what happens is this. Somebody that didn't know what a cloud architect was cut and pasted a job description for somebody else's DevOps job, and then they wrote in all the stuff that they needed. And then the next person went, that looks like a good job description. Let me add the stuff that I need. And by the time you're done, you see jobs descriptions where they want 3 Olympic gold medals. They want you to be a network engineer, a programmer, a database engineer. And what happens is these people come to we hiring managers. We ask them how to design something, and they can't do anything. And we escort them out of the building very quickly. And then when, you know what we do? We call our favorite recruiter, and we say, I need an architect. And he or she says, what kind of architect? And I say, an expert at designing, presenting, and selling. And then, poof, they send them someone that we can hire them. It got so bad on these nonsense job descriptions. I mean, so bad on these job descriptions that here's what happened. Gartner, which is an organization that really looks at, best technology, best cloud, firewalls, everything, the best and optimal thing. They said, we know this is not what a cloud architect does. And they literally speaking started interviewing chief information officers all over the world, or the country at least. And they started saying, what do you want as a cloud architect? Now, when? I'm going to tell you this right now. CEO sets the strategy. CIO helps the CEO execute their strategy through the use of IT. Do you know who runs all of the IT hires? The chief information officers. So here's what happened. The chief information officers were asked, what do you want? And here's the really good news. They actually published what they want in CIO magazine. And I will tell you what's published, and I'm going to read it to you right now, is exactly what we architects do. And in the last year, we've gotten approximately 100 people cloud architect jobs. And here's what happens when, after the fact, my architects say, Mike, I've never made so much money in my entire life. Mike, I'm having fun, but am I ever going to touch the technology? And I said, no. And they say, what do you mean? You trained me in all this technology. And I said, I trained you in the technology so you could pass the interview. In your job, you're going to be buying lunches, buying dinners, buying drinks, playing golfing, and presenting. And they're like, that's all I've done in the last year. So here's the thing. This is what the hiring manager is telling you. This is the big boss, the CIO. So when Gartner asked the chief information officers, what do you want? They said, these are the 3 main things of a cloud architect. Leading the cultural change for cloud adoption, developing and coordinating cloud architecture, that means design, and developing a cloud strategy and coordinating the adoption process. Now, then they said, what do you want your architects to do every day? And they said, help us find the talent with skills. Assess application, software, hardware. Creating a cloud broker team. Establish best practices for the cloud across the company. Overseeing governance and mitigating risk. Working closely with the IT security people to monitor privacy and develop incident response procedures. Manage budgets and estimate costs and operate at scale. Hey, wait. Did you hear code? No. Did you hear configure? No. Did you hear DevOps? DevOps? Of course not. And when, I'm going to tell you this right now, when we see people that have all these DevOps and SysOps things on their resume and all these skills, and they go on interview, they never get hired. And I get a lot of students that have wasted their time, effort, and money by taking one of those gazillion certification courses and got all these millions of associate certifications. And they come to us and they say, Mike, I can't get hired. And I say, can I see your resume? And as a student, they say, of course you can, Mike. And I say, I want to remove this DevOps certification. I want to remove this SysOps certification. I want to remove this cloud practitioner certification and I want to swap it out with, I want to remove your programming background. You coded a website? Great. We can't talk about that because we don't code, but what you can talk about is designed or architected a new website that increased sales by 11%. And then we can say, you consulted to the client with this. And here's what happens. A couple of days later, they're hired, earning more money than they ever thought. Because the key is here, what we're talking about is the cloud architect is a digital transformation specialist. We are not an engineer in any way, shape, or form. We do no engineering. That's why people don't get cloud architect jobs. We've gotten about 100 people cloud architect jobs last year. And if you look on our website, we interviewed one of my favorites, transformation stars. I've had so many. We took a 20-year-old that didn't even finish high school, and he's now working as a cloud architect for JP Morgan Chase in less than a year, in a program that costs less than $1,000, and we're excited about that. But we took Coyote, who never had a job in tech in his life. He was in college, and he's now working for AWS. We had Romanik Ivan Tamba. There's another video, and he was last job was a food server while he was in college, and he's now a cloud architect or a solution architect, I should say, with AWS. And we do it every day. Here's the thing. There's a certain archetype of the architect. It is an executive who also knows technology. So 50% tech, 50% leadership, no coding, no configuration, no Terraform. Design, present, and sell. You do those things, you master those things, you'll be good to go. What does that mean, though? It means if you're training configurations and certifications, and you go on a cloud architect interview and they ask you to sell or do a presentation, you're not going to be prepared. It means when someone asks you how to respond to an RFI, RFP, RFQ, and you've not had architect training, you have certification training, you are not prepared. When someone asks you, how do you present to the CEO versus the CFO versus the CTO, and all you have is certification training, you are not prepared. That's what we teach this. When someone asks you to write a thought leadership document that's going to be published in a big magazine, which they'll do constantly as an architect, and you've got certification training, you're not there. So that's why we tell you what you need to know, learn the things you need to know, and you will be golden. Chris, do you want to go to the next one? Anderson FX, what piece of technology would you say is the most important piece for the cloud architect to learn, and how much to it? The network and the data center. See, Anderson, we don't worry about any of those silly, stupid cloud technologies. That's not our job. What we do is we take the stuff from the network and the data center to the cloud. No, realistically speaking, what is the cloud? It's nothing more than somebody else's network and data center. Nothing more. So what do you need to know? I'm going to tell you right now. BGP, OSPF, WAN technologies such as SSL-based VPNs, IPsec-based VPNs, private lines, software-defined networking, and SASE, IP addressing, subnetting, supernetting, etc. Switching, port channel, ether channel, link aggregation groups, etc. VLANs, VLAN tagging, VLAN trunking, etc. Spanning tree, rapid spanning tree. Network address translation, which inclusive of one-to-one NAT, static NAT, dynamic NAT, NAT overload, or port address translation. DNS, DHCP, ARP, proxy ARP. Virtual machines. And the way the hypervisors work. Containers and container orchestration. Storage areas and networks, inclusive of block storage, object storage, file storage. VPN concentrators. Next generation firewalls. Intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems. Databases, when to use an NoSQL database versus when to use a relational database, and which one. Anderson, you know that? You know every single cloud. In fact, if I walk into a customer and said, here, I'm going to give you an S3 bucket, they'd laugh at me, I'd be fired, and my replacement would thank me. Now, if I walked into that same customer and said, tell me about your 3 petabytes of object storage, then we're having a conversation. And if I know object storage and how it works, whether it is Google's cloud storage, AWS S3, or Microsoft Blob, it's the same thing. So Anderson, here's what you need to learn. The network and the data center, and then you know all the clouds. And by the way, a good cloud architect should build a cloud. I would design and build your own cloud too. As a cloud architect, you're most likely going to be doing that as well. Because nobody has a single cloud anymore. 87% of customers are on 2 clouds, and 97% want to be on at least 2 clouds by the end of the year. So you got to know the cloud, not this. So don't train, as a single service or you will be unemployable. Instead, learn about cloud. What's the cloud? It's the network and the data center. That's the piece of technology. But Anderson, I'm going to tell you this right now. No one gets hired if they're an expert techie as an architect. The architect is not an engineer. In fact, the architect is an executive. So in addition to that tech, because that tech is 50% of the job, you need to be training in executive presence, CXO relevancy, sales skills, negotiation skills, leadership skills, executive presence, executive writing, executive presentations. Those are the kind of things that are really what gets you hired. So you need to have both of those. Now you know what you need to become to be a cloud architect, and it's never a single piece of technology, ever. Because we don't touch the tech. We are the end-to-end solution provider to solve customer business problems, and that's why you need so much business acumen for these careers. Good question, though. Do you need to know Python or Linux to be a cloud architect? No, we design, present, and sell. Now, if you were a cloud engineer, that'd be critical stuff. If you were a DevOps engineer, that would be critical stuff. But Python is software. We never touch the technology. So I've been an architect now for 25 years. When I was an engineer, I was on the command line every day. When I became an architect about 25 years ago, that's the last time I touched the technology. Now, most of my architects all over the world, they call me, they're like, Mike, I spent $100,000 on lunches this year, just like you told me you did. And I said, yes. And then they say, will I ever touch the cloud? And I say, no. And they say, it's been 11 months and I haven't touched the technology thing ever. I said, remember in class, I said, we design, present, and sell. And there's no part of this. Now, do you need to know Linux? Here's what you need to know. What is the Linux kernel? Where are the memory? How's it optimize memory? How do Linux hypervisors work? Where are the drivers? See, you need to know the architecture of Linux, because Linux isn't even an operating system, for example. It's basically a kernel for which you add packages. It's very different than Windows, which is an operating system, or Unix, which is an operating system. Linux is just a kernel. So you do need to know what is Linux and how does Linux work. But again, we never touch the technology. So I want you to retrain your thinking in a different matter. Look at it this way. Think about a building architect, because we are an architect just like a building architect. If I want to design a beautiful hotel, let's say I want to go to Dubai and I want to build a beautiful hotel like the Burj Al Arab or something on the Palm Island, I'm going to hire an architecture firm. And they're going to have an architect, and he or she is going to say, what do you want it to look like? And I'm going to say, I want it 2,000 meters tall. I want something super scary and impressive with a little pointy tip on the top. I want a giant water slide. I want waterfalls. I want gardens with palm trees, and we're going to need irrigation systems because it's a desert, etc., etc., etc. You know, there's kind of that. So, you know, they're going to do that. They're going to generate some beautiful blueprints, etc., etc., etc. And then we're done. Now, the architect will then turn those plans over to the customer, and the customer will hire a construction crew. You don't see architects using hammers, drills, saws, screwdrivers. And that's the thing, because architects are not hands-on positions. They are design positions. Now, that architect needs to know about how to design that building so it doesn't fall over, right? So they need to know the why, and they need to know how the systems work, because you can't design what you don't know. So an automotive architect that would design a car that's doing their computer-aided drafting designs, and they're looking at, you know, what do you call it, friction and coefficients of friction as they're designing it for better fuel efficiency. And they may be thinking about how to improve performance, fuel economy, etc., whether the wheelbase is shorter or longer in order to improve speed or stability. That's the knowledge the architect needs to know, not how to do it, because we don't touch it. That's somebody else's job. So I design the solution, I help sell the solution, I negotiate the solution, and the customer says, thank you, Mike. At that point, I am off to the next customer to design their solution, and the team of cloud engineers and cloud admins and DevOps engineers, they come in to build it. So as a cloud architect, you don't touch the tech. So no, you don't need to know Python. You need to know Linux, how it's architected, but not how to work with it. And that's why in our cloud engineering classes, we get people geeky on Linux because they have to do it. and Python, Terraform, etc., because that's what cloud engineers do. They build. But cloud architects design, present, and sell. So as a rule, if it's not part of designing, presenting, or selling, we don't do it. Good question, though. Up and up. Hi, Mike. Glad to have you back. Could you please share where I can learn more about business acumen? Up and up, I'll give you two places. You could take our course and it's completely covered. You could get a business degree like an MBA and learn business acumen, or you could take about $50,000 of 1 week boot camps, and you could do it that way. But our program is by far the cheapest. But what we're talking about is ROI modeling, reading of financial statements, reading of balance sheets, looking at industry acumen, understanding the triggers. How do we increase sales? Understanding the triggers of how do we increase productivity or get more work done with less money. Understand the impact of interest rates on the weighted average cost of capital and what that's going to do to an organization's sales. That's business acumen. Knowing what to say to the CEO, which means knowledge of CEOs and how we work, versus knowledge of the operations team, like Chris, my chief operating officer, he does something else. Versus how do you communicate to the chief financial officer? How do you read a room? That's part of your business acumen. What's the room telling you when you're talking to them? These are the kind of things that are really, really, really critical to learn. Leadership skills. So, and that's what we're talking about on getting hired. So MBA would be a great way to do it. Of course, you could buy finance textbooks, accounting textbooks, management textbooks, etc., or you could take our course where it's all covered. But you've got to do these kind of things. They are absolutely, absolutely, absolutely critical. Good question, though. And then, Chris, you want to go to the next one? Nate Robertson. Hi, Mike. As law enforcement, is it possible for you to transition to a cloud job? Of course it is. Nate, if I told you I spent 7 years as a paramedic firefighter early in my career, which is a job I love. Nate, we've taken a high school dropout and got him hired as a cloud architect. We've taken two people that one person was serving food and another person was a college student who got my cloud architect job. Of course, we could easily help you transition. So Nate, I want to tell you something, and this is pretty important to me. What you've done in your past life has no bearing on what you did in your future life. Now, the fact that you're in law enforcement means you have a good, clean criminal record. Now, if you were an axe murderer or a serial killer, except in California where you're not allowed to do a background check, then yes, that would hold you back. But what you did yesterday or what you ate for dinner yesterday has no bearing on today. Now, if you've been eating bad foods for the last 3 months, you may have some extra weight on you and need to go on a diet. But you can go on a diet and be thin and fit for the rest of your life. Of course you could get a translation to a cloud job. Of course you could. Of course you could. Of course you could. Nate, my last job was practicing internal medicine. 6 months later, I was the lead architect on my team with the world's largest ISP. So, internet service provider. The key is, of course you can do it. Now, Nate, it's a little bit mental toughness grit thing here. It's like that. So, hope if you're in law enforcement, every time you've been maced or pepper sprayed or stung with a stun gun, or trained in any Krav Maga, for example, or these things, you know how it hurts? That mental toughness training will have helped you. For me, I've got a huge tactical background, which we won't talk about. And I'm going to tell you this. When it came to studying, that mental toughness helped me. I'm even going to tell you this right now. I have something called reflex sympathetic dystrophy, which is the most painful condition in the world. I have 5 herniated discs, 2 torn rotator cuffs, labral tears in both hips, and joints that are so arthritic they need replacement. And if I tell you it takes me 3 hours every morning to be able to walk down the stairs, and I've got a routine, I've got to loosen every joint up, and then I got to do, when that gets, I do some specialty yoga, which has been modified highly to warm me up in 130-degree room, and then I go jump in 160-degree sauna for another hour. Yes, I said an hour. Do more joint mobility things, and I'm pain-free for the next 2 hours, so I can do a session like this, and then I jump back in the sauna a lot of the time and do more PT just to live. So the point is, I can do that and help run a company like this. And you know what? You can do it too. You can do it, Nate. You can do it, Nate. You can do it, Nate. Make your career exactly what you want it to be by working hard and doing better. And you'll get there. And if you'd like to train with us, we would love to train you. In law enforcement, thank you for your service. I deeply appreciate what you're doing for all of our public safety. And yes, you can do it. So go do it. Follow your dreams. Here's what you do. It all starts with a dream. And the dream turns into a goal. And the goal needs to turn into a plan. And then you execute that plan and you run as fast as you can towards that plan, and you will be successful. Thank you for your service. Ken Sherman. Love hearing about the experiences from our early technologists and the Internet Lighthouse customers. There's no better time to hear. You got this. Thank you so much. Yeah, I remember when I started, when a 56K lease line between New York and Delhi, India was about $5,000 a month. Times have changed a lot in many ways, but we're still dealing with the same technologies. It's just they're better, faster, and cheaper now. Love talking about it. So thanks so much, Ken. Digital Man. Hey, Mike, you did good in your Cloud Architect Recruiter interview. Wonderful. I have a technical interview next week. What tips do I have? I have about 10 different, maybe 15 videos on how to interview for a Cloud Architect job. So I suggest you watch them. I also have a tech interview mastery course, and it's very cheap. Now, normally someone who wants to do a practice interview with me, it's at least $400, and I've got a huge success rate with people, so it's worth it. Having said that, this course is $200, and we have a 30% discount right now. And in this course, we started out by telling you exactly what hiring managers want. And then in each thing, we teach you how to be what the hiring manager wants. So there's that. So I can highly, highly, highly recommend that if you actually have the Cloud Architect skills. And all you need is polishing up. But I've got about 20 free videos on my YouTube channel as well. And wow, they will help you. I've gotten a lot of people that said, Mike, I watched all your YouTube videos on interviews, and it helped me get hired. I also, Chris, do we have a practice interview session coming up publicly? I know we did.
It'll be at the end of the month.
At the end of the month. Once a month, I like to do some free practice interview sessions. And you can watch some of those interview sessions as well on our channels, and we're doing another one at the end of the month. So make sure you sign up for that, because hopefully this goes well. But, lots of these interview things can take a long time. So potentially join that as well, so we can practice interview you and hopefully help you with those final interviews. So follow that. But remember this. We design, present, and sell. And I'm going to tell you, in most cases, if you use a bunch of buzzwords and jargon like EC2 and S3, interview's over. If you talk about block storage, object storage, file storage, interview's great. Show them that you know how to design, present, and sell. Know about how to definitely have this answer. Why should I hire you? Have to. Be prepared, if you do well, to have to deliver a presentation in front of an audience, because that's part of an architect interview in most cases. Demonstrate your business acumen. Demonstrate your leadership skills. Demonstrate your communication skills. If you don't have executive presence, work on it. Here's the difference. BGP is a path vector routing protocol that utilizes TCP port 179 to exchange network layer reachability information. That is a normal, common engineering description without executive presence. $40,000 of executive presence training later, which I took. BGP is a path vector routing protocol that's used for interdomain routing. It's specifically used to exchange network layer reachability information. See, in one case, you felt me. So, practice making your point, pausing, changing your vocal tone. Practice using gestures to increase your executive presence. Make sure your CXO relevance. You better know what a CEO versus a CFO versus a CTO cares about. Show how you communicate, how you can sell. Communicate how you can connect to the people. Establish rapport in the first couple of seconds. That's really critical. Show the hiring manager that they can't live without you because of your skills, your ability to bring in revenue and consult the customers and delight customers with your exceptional customer experience. Those are the things you need to do. What do you have to prove to the hiring manager? You have to prove the following. Hiring manager wants to know that you're technically competent or have the ability to do the job. The hiring manager wants to know that they can trust you. So don't lie or bluff, because trust me, we don't ask a question we don't know to. And as soon as somebody lies to us, the interview's over. Show that you know what you know and know what you don't know. Because if not, people make mistakes. Show that you can present. Show that when you explain technology, what is the technology? How does it work and why do we use it? I don't care how you can configure it because an architect, you won't configure it, but what is the tech? How does it work? Why do we use it? That's what you're going to be explaining and doing your whole life. So they're going to ask you that. Those would be the things that without knowing you, I would recommend on the spot. Those 20 free interview videos that I have, our tech interview mastery program, et cetera, if you desire. But make sure you can communicate those things. Hiring manager also cares that you're energetic, enthusiastic, and passionate about the work. They care that you're a team player because architect's a team sport. And they care about your leadership skills. So communicate that and have the business acumen, the technical competence, and the leadership skills. Demonstrate that and you'll be good to go. But make sure you know the network and the data center and all those things that I talk about. If you've got some questions, please ask me. I can stay here till 11 o'clock today. And I want to maximize all of your career. So please feel free to ask questions. VNHG, what are the top 5 abilities of amazing cloud architects? Now, the first thing is understanding how to design end-to-end systems. The next one, which is more important, is your communication skills. And here's why. This is a job where 50% of your time is going to be communicating. Now, you're never going to touch the tech, but you're constantly going to be communicating. So communication skills and listening skills, which are part of communication skills, are the most critical. And here's why. VNHG, nobody's going to hand you a piece of paper and say, build this. Engineers do that. We're architects. You've got to start with the customer and ask them about their business goals, business pain points, business challenges. And the better your ability to ask questions determines the better information you get. If you've got garbage information, your architecture is garbage and it's going to fall apart. If you've got good, complete information because you know how to ask the right questions, the right open-ended questions, then you'll be good to go because you'll get the right information. So design first, communication skills second. Sales skills third. This is a job of design, present, and sell. So your sales skills, which are highly dependent upon your business acumen, executive presence, CXO relevancy, are critical. If you can't sell, you can't work as an architect. Done. That's it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Keep that in the back of your mind. So we've talked about design, communication, and sales skills. Executive presence, wow. And here's the thing. If any of you have ever walked into a room and someone walked in and you knew they were in charge, that's executive presence. If you don't have executive presence, you'll be relegated to engineering positions and not be allowed to be there. So we've talked about sales skills, communication skills, executive presence, and solution design. I'm probably going to tell you next that your presentation skills, whether that be written presentations or verbal presentations, are so critical. I've never been hired for an architect job where I didn't have to do a tremendous number of presentations to prove that I can do it. So presentation skills, they're your biggest skills. No, wait, only one of the 5 had to do with technical competency. Now, Chris, if you have easy access, we've been published in about 30 magazines talking about the skills that are necessary to do this. And if we want to list some of those magazine articles, if somebody from my team can find them easily, and we always talk about executive presence, communication skills, leadership skills, sales skills, business acumen, emotional intelligence, and network and data xenosaur, cloud infrastructure design skills. They're your main skills. Excellent question. What are not cloud architect skills? Hands-on tech, we don't touch it. Coding, I don't touch it. Configuration, we don't do it. DevOps and CI/CD stuff, somebody else's job. Linux admin, somebody else's job. Terraform, somebody else's job. That's what other professionals do. So now you know VNHG. And please ask some questions. Don't be shy. I don't bite. I want to help everybody get to their goal. Basing, is Linux essential for a cloud architect? Remember what we do. We design, present, and sell. So we will never touch Linux ever. But we need to know Linux, how it works. Remember, we're systems designers. So imagine this versus the difference between a configurer. If I were to tell, so I'm going to talk about, let's say, BGP. So BGP is the routing protocol. The internet, we use it for interdomain routing. You use it when you connect to the cloud providers because they're a different organization than yours. So interdomain. And, if I have to do BGP to 1,000 IBGP peers or eBGP peers, I need to know all the traffic engineering. Under these circumstances, I want the traffic to go this way. Under these circumstances, I want the traffic to go this way. I want to make sure that if we have a BGP hijacking situation, no one can inject bad routes. Now, I want to make sure that my traffic follows this path. I want to make sure that I don't go out this internet service provider and have my traffic come back in the service provider, which happens all the time, which causes out of order packets and causes application nightmares, unless you know what you're doing. What I just discussed took me 10,000 hours to learn how to design that. 10,000 hours. Now, I can easily, to a junior level engineer, say, here, this is what needs to be done. Go configure this. And they'll say, sure, neighbor 192.168, remote AS 65312, network 10.0.0, mask 255.255.255.0, aggregate address 10.0.0.0, 255.0.0.0, summary dash only. That's configuration. I can find that in about a minute. So best way I can describe it, this thing is about 20 years ago when the CCI exam was really hard, the Cisco Certified Internet Expert, because it was 2 days in those days. They made it easy because too many people failed, so now it's only a 1-day exam. But back when it was this really brutal 2-day exam, here's what they did. They would ask you to design something that they knew wouldn't work, intentionally to see if you were smart enough to fix it. And they would ask you to design something very, very, very complicated. And they'd give you the instructions on how to configure it on disk, and here's the reason why. They knew that if you didn't know how it all worked, you couldn't architect it or design it. So they gave you the hands-on configurations instructions. So when we built it, because they knew if we spent all our time learning how to configure, we'd have no idea how to design. And the test was a design test. So kind of think about it this way. If you were an executive chef, you might not even be doing the cooking. You might not be. You might be supervising sous chefs and other people. Now, in order to make that menu as the executive chef, you need to have a lot of knowledge on different foods and food combinations and food and wine pairing. This food goes with this. This steak, which is brown or black, needs to go with something green, maybe some broccoli, and maybe something like a sweet potato, add some color to the plate. Oh, wait, we're going to put some garnish on it to make it look pretty. The executive chef needs to know that, and they balance colors and flavors and art. That's what they do. But they need to know all the stuff that goes into that. Kind of like I used to practice internal medicine. So I was a paramedic firefighter, did a little internal medicine as a nurse practitioner, and then poof, I worked in tech. Now, here's the thing. If a patient comes into my office BCing and they say my throat hurts, here's what I do. I ask them some questions. Tell me about your throat. What makes it better? What makes it worse, for example? And then I examine them, which is the same thing as an architect does. We ask some questions, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So then you've done those two things. And then we make an assessment and build a plan. Now, what if in the same things BCing, I went to the hospital and I said, my patient needs hospitalization. What do? I write a plan for the patient. Admit to the ICU. Heparin, this number of units, sub-Q. IV, half normal, D5.5, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I don't do the job. There's these really incredible, capable, smart nurses that actually do the work. Same thing for the architect. We design it as the doctor, and the cloud engineer functions effectively as the nurse. They build it. They're carrying out the plan. So think of it that way, and you will always know what an architect does. They design the system, somebody else builds it. So no, we don't need hands-on Linux anything, because you're not going to be hands-on anything in life. But you need to learn how to design, present, and sell, and you will be great. So you need to know how Linux works, maybe how you tune the performance of Linux, and you can always ask other Linux people. How does the Linux hypervisors work? How does the Linux kernel work? If I was going to build an OpenStack cloud, which trust me, you're going to be building for all your people, which is the Linux-based cloud, how does that work? So you need to know how to secure Linux, et cetera, but you won't be doing the work. You need the brain power of how it works, not how to do it. It's somebody else's job. Good question. Very good question. And that's where most people get architect training wrong. They confuse the architect with the engineer. The engineer is hands-on, hands-on, hands-on. They're a techie. The architect's a business executive that designs, presents, and sells. So I hope I answered your question, B. Singh. Love that name, Lion, by the way. Love it, love it, love it. So very cool. Chris, we can go to the next one. How tough is the AWS Architect Professional exam? Quite frankly, I think it's pretty easy. I've had students that passed it in a week, 2 weeks, that really worked at it hard. How would I so when I did the Cisco Certified Internet Expert exam, it was 75,000 pages of reading to pass it. The AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional, from start to finish, you're dealing with about 500 to 700 pages max. So in my mind, it's a pretty nothing exam. Now, I will tell you this. The way they write the questions on that exam is some of the worst I have ever seen in my entire life. And what they do is they take a very, very, very basic concept, which is covered in that exam, and they make it extremely challenging by asking the questions in a stupid way. In fact, I'd almost tell you the key to success is which one uses more AWS services. So B. Singh, if you don't know anything about tech, the exam is going to be pretty easy. If you've been working in tech for a long time, let me tell you the following why it's going to be harder. When you do this exam, you're going to get one answer, which will be like the Google way, one answer, which will be the Microsoft way, one answer might be the Cisco way or the IBM way, and one answer is the AWS way. And they're all good answers. So if you know a lot about tech, this exam is going to be very hard because you're going to have to unlearn your knowledge in order to pass the exam. Now, if you don't know anything about tech, it's going to be very easy for you. But what I will recommend is you read the white papers on the AWS website, which are their sales documents, because this is a sales exam. What I mean by sales exam, it's so biased to help you sell AWS stuff. And generally speaking, vendor certifications of the name of the service and how to configure, they're designed to bias you with their brainwashing of how to sell their stuff. So for example, kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So that's how these things kind of work. So I think it's a basic, very, very simple exam compared to the other exams. I'll give you an example. I did the Google Professional Cloud Architect, and I spent 2 days in preparation for it and passed it. Now, admittedly, I knew cloud, but I never worked on the Google cloud before, and I spent about 2 days. But I know the network and the data center. So if you know the network and the data center, it's simple. If you don't know the network and the data center, it's going to be hard. So instead of studying for the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional, which basically is 5% of what you need to be a cloud architect, only 5 at maximum 5%. And then having to learn what is an architect, learn the network and the data center, spend 2 days passing the exam, and you'll be done with it. So it's all based upon your background, all based upon your knowledge. It's kind of a nothing exam for my students. In fact, I had one student that did the CCNP, the AWS Cloud Practitioner, which we advised against, the AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate, and Certified Solution Architect Professional, all in 90 days. And the CCNP, the Cisco Certified Network Professional, was about 10 times harder than that because the CCNP is about 10,000 pages of reading from start to finish, and the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional from start to finish is maybe 700 or less. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. But you do need a practice test for this exam because the way they ask those questions is the worst I've ever seen. They are one paragraph long, et cetera, with jargon, and more jargon. So taking the exam, I want you to really do some practice exams first, so you can get used to the bad way they ask questions with the wordy examples, and then you'll be good to go. Hope I answered your question there, B. Singh. Ken Sherman, do I think a PMP or project is a good resource to learn business acumen? Absolutely not, Ken. There is no certification that teaches you business acumen. And a PMP or a project manager is a task manager, meaning you do this, you do this, you do this. Now, what do we do? You need 50 people to help you with your architecture. The first thing you got to do is go to your executive vice president and say, Executive Vice President, I have a $160 million opportunity right now. I really need 2 cloud security architects from your team. and they say, can you show me the opportunity? You show them, they say, okay, you've got 2 people on my team. Now then, you need some cloud network architects, because remember, architecture is a team sport. You're never going to do anything yourself. Then it's sort of like the following. You now need to go to the networking team, and you need to ask that executive vice president if you can borrow 4 other people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then next, keep this in the back of your mind. Then you're going to need some DevOps engineers to deploy it. So you're going to go to another manager to request it. And the people that are going to be on your team don't work for you. So your soft skills, your executive presence, your ability to manage the emotions of your team, the ability to sell your team to work for you, that's what you need. Not, here's a task, here's a task, here's a task. Here's the thing, Ken Sherman. A cloud architect is an executive. Executives are not about certification. In fact, the more certifications you get, if you get more than 2, the less valuable you are. So look, I've done a lot of certifications in my life. And before I learned how they were not helping me at all. On my resume, it says Mike Gibbs, MS, MBA, CCIE, and I often put Google Professional Cloud Architect. Look, I have other certifications, but I keep them off of my resume. And here's the reason why. Depending upon the job I were to apply for, I'm a $300,000 to $500,000 enterprise architect. Now, if I put 10 certifications, I'm a $130,000 architect, because now I'm a techie and not an executive. So you do not build architecture careers by getting a bunch of certifications. And there's no business acumen in a PMP. You want business acumen, take our training or get an MBA. That's business acumen. That's where you do it. It's kind of like me. I advise people to never do master's degrees in computing, ever. Get a master's degree in business. There's no benefit to doing a master's degree in networking computing at all, 0. Because what they teach you in school is not only irrelevant, but more importantly, there's something to be said for your IQ and your EQ. And let's make me very clear. So the average cloud architect earns $160,000 a year. Average. Now, if I told you individuals with better soft skills on average earn an additional 30% annually, 30% of 160 is about $55,000 a year. Now, if I told you that, and statistically speaking, you can check this, individuals with higher levels of emotional intelligence earn $29.6 thousand more per year per average. Now you're dealing with 55 and 30, that's $85,000 a year. Over the course of 30 years, that's $2.4 million more that you'll earn by studying those. Now, get another certification, not going to help you at all. So no, a PMP is not a good way to learn business acumen at all. Because a there's a project manager is a task manager. Now, a program manager who manages a global rollout of things. Now, this person has much more executive presence. And most of those don't even have the PMP certification. They do that kind of work, but they have good soft skills, leadership skills, executive presence, emotional intelligence, all of it. So no, getting a PMP is not an advantage unless you want to be a project manager, not a cloud architect. Now, if you want to be a project manager, it's helpful, but not as an architect. It's no benefit for us to learn somebody else's job. No, it's not our world. That's somebody else's world. Learn your job, not somebody else's job. You're in an airplane, a couple engines fail. Who do you want? A pilot that was in the Navy for 20 years, that worked for as a pilot for 30 years, or the doctor, lawyer, accountant that decided to be a pilot because they thought it was fun? With 3 out of 4 engines dead on the plane, who do you want? I want the pilot, not the hobbyist. So don't get a gazillion certifications outside of your career. It makes you look less prepared for your career. It lowers your salary and it makes you less employable, not more. Keep that in the back of your mind. You should be good to go. And actually, Alonzo from my team actually does have a PMP cert. And he actually has done a lot of cloud project management with it because that's what PMPs do. He's real good at it, leading huge projects on the cloud. But there's a difference between leading a project on the cloud and designing it. He is also an expert architect as well. Kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Ask us some questions. We're always happy to answer questions. And then Chris, if you want to bring me in some technology questions or any kind of questions, I'd love to help. But I'll tell you one thing, let's bring Bracing's question up on the cloud, on a CompTIA certification. Is the CompTIA Cloud Plus a good certification? Do not waste your time with it. In fact, I'm going to tell you this. I strongly recommend you don't waste your time with any CompTIA certs whatsoever. And here's the reason: employers don't seem to like them. Now, the US government likes the Security Plus, but I remove all CompTIA certifications from my students' resumes. And here's the reason why. They're too basic for anything. So no, we strongly recommend against that. Here's the reason why. The average cloud architect earns $600 a day. Every day you spent wasting your time on an irrelevant certification cost you a fortune, which means if you spend 2 months learning a worthless certification, you've lost $24,000 of income. So strongly don't recommend that at all. Again, too many certifications makes you less hireable. So if you're going to get certifications, make them the big ones, and you'll be good to go. Chris, let's go to the next one. Hey, Mike, Alonzo Coleman question. Mike, can you share with the group the new cloud hire, what a new cloud architect can expect in the first 30 days of employment? Yes. And then Chris will go to the education master's question next. So what are you going to do in your first 30 days? First thing you're going to do is you're going to be meeting people. You're going to get a corporate credit card, and I suggest you use that corporate credit card and take people out for lunches, dinners, and drinks. Go spend 10 grand in your first month to build some relationships. You're going to be going to training classes where you're going to learn the company's culture. You're most likely going to get a mentor that you're going to talk about. You're going to be doing some training because all the companies are going to train you the way they do things. And truth be told, for the first 6 months, chances are you will do nothing unless you have a big background. You're just going to be going to classes, and more classes. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Classes, and more classes. So what are you really going to be doing? You're going to be meeting people. You're going to be, learning the corporate things, learning the corporate systems, getting to maybe potentially shadow somebody for a little while. But really, it's a chance to meet people. Most likely for the first 6 months, people almost will do nothing. They're going to go to training, and more training. And, they have to train you. So if you go to Amazon, for example, you need this is the way we do stuff here. Here's the way we want you to call stuff, et cetera, et cetera. If you go to Microsoft, it's going to be completely opposite. Here's the way we want you to behave. So first 30 days is typically going to be training, and more training. But I strongly advise use that corporate Amex that they're going to give you and start buying some lunches and dinners and drinks and going out and meet people, assuming COVID wouldn't be an issue. And since it is, communicate over the web, communicate via Zoom, get to know people. Do not go to meetings with your camera off. Show the manager you're there. Smile, volunteer for projects. Show that manager and your team that you are there to work. Now, granted, they'll have you study, but make sure that you are there to work. Great question, Alonzo. It's all going to be meeting people, talking to people, etc. for the first 30 days. Excellent question. Chris, let's go to the master's degree question. Anderson FX, for someone without a tech background and wants to get a master's degree as a cloud architect, what's your advice? Don't do it. I'm going to tell you right now, Anderson, my advice is not to do it. I take graduates of these programs and then I train them to become a cloud architect all the time. And here's the reason why. What they teach in these programs is generic cloud stuff. Little Linux, a little Python, a little sysops, a little maintenance. They don't teach executive presence, communication skills, leadership skills, sales skills, design skills, or anything related. So Anderson FX, when we get people on these programs, we have to train them from scratch. Now, if you were to get an MBA by comparison, you'll learn the business acumen, the leadership skills, the sales skills, the emotional intelligence, and you'll be able to read the financial statements. That will help you. Now, Anderson, I've never done a degree in tech. My bachelor's degree is in nursing, my master's degree is in nursing, and my other master's degree is in MBA. I will tell you that when people say, Mike, should I get a master's degree in tech? I say never. And they say, why? I say, it won't raise your salary. It won't teach you anything of value. You're going to write lots of papers, and they're going to teach you how to write them incorrectly. And here's the reason. They're going to say, I would like a 40-page paper on this. 40-page paper on this. And what you're going to really be doing in real life is, how do I write a 2-page paper that the CEO will read? So to me, master's degrees in tech are pretty much worthless from building your career. Now, undergraduate, sure, if you had a degree in electrical engineering for networking, beautiful. Or if you had a degree in computer science, you won't use it, but it looks good as an undergraduate. But your master's degree, make it in something valuable, like an MBA. Because there is nothing they're going to teach you in these programs that's actually your job as an architect. Zero. I mean, 0, where there's no parts of it that's going to be your job. So you got a choice. You can get a master's degree, get all this stuff, and still be completely unprepared, and then need to do an MBA anyway, or get MBA level skills. And then you're going to have to learn how to do cloud architecture because it's not going to be taught in there. So I recommend that you learn the cloud, which means learn the network and the data center. Learn how to design systems like that, ideally with a program like ours, which is much cheaper than a master's degree. And then get your master's degree in something that matters, like an MBA. Look, I've got a lot of students all over the world, and they're like, Mike, should I do a master's degree? And I said, yes, get an MBA. And they're like, why not in tech? And I said, it's not going to help you. And they said, what do you mean it's not going to help me? I said, here's the thing. I got somebody that didn't even finish high school, a cloud architect job. Now, these jobs are all six-figure jobs, all of them. I can't comment or know what he was paid, but the point is, here's the thing. We're getting people jobs that people that have never worked in tech, that have zero tech background, that are between $100,000 and $300,000 a year. And none of them have master's degrees in cloud architecture. And the ones that do, we have to untrain them, all those programming things they learned and Linux things, and we have to train them how to become an architect. So I wouldn't recommend you get a master's degree as a cloud architect. I recommend you learn how to become a cloud architect and get an MBA. That's what I would do. That's what I did do. And who do I hire on my team as my architecture team, my business people? Alonzo has an MBA. I have an MBA. Chris has an MBA, because those skills are valuable to me. They're very valuable to me. But I know what people learn in these master's degree programs. And periodically we look at them. And I call and pretend to be a student. I look at them and I'm like, yeah, okay. Are you interested in it? I'm like, no, because it's teaching me somebody else's career. Much more related to cloud admin work than cloud architect work, which is what they teach. So my recommendation is to do an MBA and learn the network and the data center and learn the cloud and really become a cloud architect. But I don't recommend master's degree in technology. I don't have one. I do have 2 master's degrees. They're not in tech. And I'm going to tell you what, my master's degree in nursing, which taught me emotional intelligence and communication skills and connecting to others, wow, that's helped me in my entire career. And Anderson, to put it in the context of how much did it help me? Well, on my first interview, I interviewed with a gentleman named Vendor in Piscataway, New Jersey at WorldCom. And he interviews me, and I have 0 degrees in tech and 0 experience in tech other than the labs I did at home. And we start talking. He asked me some questions, I answer him. He asked me more questions, I answer him. And he says, Mike, I am going to hire you. But you applied to be a network engineer, but you're not. You're a senior network engineer. And I'm like, what? And he says, look, you just told me you have no background in tech, no experience in tech, no degrees in tech, and you already know more than my staff. He said, you're a senior engineer. 6 months later, I was the lead architect. Now, here's the thing, Anderson. The people that I went to school with, that I worked with, all had better degrees. All of them. Here was my career. Here was their career. Stagnation. And here's the reason why. What gets you paid more? Leadership skills, sales skills, emotional intelligence, executive presence. What do you need as an architect? The ability to go meet a CEO, which they don't teach in these master's degrees, ask the CEO about their business, read their financial statement, look at what the industry analysts are saying about their business, and recommend a solution that's going to maximize their business. You learn that with us, but you're also going to learn that in an MBA. So a cloud architect is a management consultant. Let me explain it to you. So my last biggest architect job was as follows. I worked at Cisco as an enterprise architect. My title was management consultant, but I was working as an architect. Now, what does a management consultant do? They interview the CEO and say, tell me about your business goals, your business pain points, your business challenges. The management consultant then observes people, asks what the people are doing. The management consultant determines the optimal end state. And then they create something called the business architecture, which includes the people, processes, and technology to improve that business. What's a cloud architect do? Mr. Customer, Mr. CEO, tell me about your business goals, your business pain points, your business challenges. Then The cloud architect brings in a team of engineers to baseline the organization's systems. Then you start asking people what they do in their job. You look at the industry analysts, financial statements. You consider what other customers have done to do better business. And then you determine the optimal end state. And then you determine the people, processes, and technology necessary to get the job done. Hey, same job. It's a consulting job. What helps you with the consulting jobs? MBAs. So that's what I recommend is the MBA. I am not a fan of master's degrees in technologies. But great question. Mickey, if I learn Azure, AWS, and GCP at the pro level separately, and then you're trying to find their connection, will that give you okay knowledge of the cloud? No, that will give you 5% of the knowledge you need for the job. But first, you got to tell me which job you want. Here's the thing. These certifications are the name of a service and how to configure that service. So if you want to design things, they're not covered at all in certifications. Now, if I taught you what is a virtual machine, like I teach my students, and you truly understood what a virtual machine is, it doesn't matter if it's an Oracle virtual machine, an Azure virtual machine, an AWS EC2 instance, a Google Compute Engine, and it's because it's the same tech. And if you know what object storage is, it doesn't matter if it's Microsoft Blob, Google Cloud Storage, AWS S3, it's the same tech. So no, you're not going to try and find that connections. Learn to drive a car. Now, Mickey, I'll give you two options. Now, if I taught you how to drive a Ferrari, and this was an elastic, rotational, interdirectional vector changer, and the thing that's called the GAS, that's called a elastic-based accelerator, decelerator, potentiometer, et cetera. And then we had another elastic-based speed changer, slow start stopper. And you learned that in your head and didn't know what the heck it meant. And then all of a sudden you have to drive a Honda. And now you've got a cloud-based angular minute of angle changer. And now you've got a cloud-based start, stop, accelerate, decelerate, foot changer. And then you got some other thing, a cloud-based stopper. And then you went to another cloud and they had a new name. You wouldn't know what any of it is. It's ridiculous. Learn to drive the car. So Mickey, let me tell you why medicine helped me so much. So let's say I wanted to prescribe the drug atorvastatin. Now, Pfizer, when they invented the drug, spent millions of dollars coming up with the name Lipitor. Now, when that drug went off patent, there were 50 other drugs with similar names based by all the generics providers. Imagine doctors trying to communicate with names that are irrelevant. When we write a prescription or communicate to other doctors, you'll never say Lipitor on the prescription. We'll say atorvastatin and a dosage, and here's the reason why. We must all communicate in the same language. And Mickey, when we speak to the customer, here's the thing. We must communicate to them in their language, which is not these silly marketing branding names. So no, that will not help you at all. It will give you no knowledge of the cloud. It will give you knowledge of names of services and how to configure them, but it won't teach you how anything works. And that's the problem with certifications. Now, if your goal is a cloud admin where all you want to do is configure stuff, and you're not looking to get paid well, and you're not working to be a cloud engineer, and you don't want to be a cloud architect, you might get lucky with that. Might. But mind you, this is going to be an extremely low-paying job, and it's going to be the first job to get laid off in a bad economy. So no, that will not get you anything. You need to know what is the cloud, how does the cloud work, why do we use it, how to build solutions on the cloud. If you're an engineer, how to design solutions on the cloud. If you're an architect, you need CXO relevancy, sales skills, business acumen, leadership skills, communication skills, and network and data center skills, which means you must know BGP, OSPF, WAN technology such as SSL-based VPNs, IPsec VPNs, private lines, which are not covered in these things in any depth, software-defined networking, things like Ethernet over MPLS, SASE kind of networking connections, switching, VLANs, VLAN tagging, VLAN trunking, spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, etc. IP addressing, subnetting, supernetting, etc. This is part of our career. ARP, proxy ARP, DNS, DHCP, we need to know. Servers and server virtualization and containers and orchestration, block storage, object storage, file storage, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems, next generation firewalls, because we're not going to be using these cloud-based anything. We're going to be using enterprise-grade stuff. And also, we're probably not going to be using any of these proprietary services covered in your certification, since 87% of customers are multi-cloud, which means things like Amazon Aurora, DynamoDB, can't use them because they don't work multi-cloud. So we have to use things like an Oracle database, a MySQL database, a Postgres database, a MariaDB database, etc. and not the proprietary stuff, because that locks us into a single cloud. So no, that will not be successful at all in that. What that will do, will give you 3 certifications, and you'll be waiting to get hired, and we'll have to train you after that, or you'll have to basically spend a couple of years looking for a job. Certifications don't get people jobs in the cloud. Knowledge of the cloud. What is the cloud? How does the cloud work? How do I design it for the architect, for the cloud engineer? One of these pro certifications is enough, as long as you have that network and data center knowledge that we have. But for the engineer, you need to know Python and Linux and Terraform. Again, not covered in this stuff. So no, this is not going to get you anywhere. That's just going to waste your time, effort, and money, and I don't want to see you do that. Klaus, what's the difference between the Plus program and the basic one? I'm going to make this very simple. In the Plus Live program, you get to come to live classes. Like we have a live class today at noon, where we'll be able to talk and communicate. Students can ask questions. I will give the students a scenario, for example, and they will get to work with me live in real time. In the basic one, you don't get to come to the live classes, but you get recordings of the live classes. You still do the same labs. You still have access to the same channels and all the same course videos. You just don't get to come to class. Now, coming to class is big because you can ask me questions in class. So we prefer you to come to class. If you're in class and a recruiter calls me and says, Mike, do you know any architects? And I say, I know this guy, Klaus, he's great. I can refer you, assuming you're great. But if you're not in class, I have no idea whether to know whether you're good or not because I've never met you. So keep that in the back of your mind. But both courses will do the job. Both courses will get you to your goal. And either way, you should get cloud hired. But that's the main difference. The Plus program is better if you can attend the classes because it enables you to ask questions in class. Keep that in the back of your mind and you should be good to go. James, you have a cloud architect interview on Monday. What should you study? You need to know system design, which means you need to know the network and the data center. You need to know how to design situations, not how to touch it. So you should be able to talk about all the technologies, what they are, how they work, and why they would use it. So I'll give you an example on object storage. If I ask you what is object storage and you say AWS S3, the interview's over. Now, if you were to say object storage is a type of storage area network, which means the limitation of the speed is the network. Now, obviously, object storage as a storage area network are storage systems, which are RAID arrays that are filled with hard drives. Object storage is a very unique kind of storage area network in that it can't be used by computer systems. And the reason object storage can't be used by computer systems is as follows. If we were to use object storage as a primary storage type, every single time something that would change, we'd create new versions. So let's look at an operating system in the swap file. We've got a server with a 1 terabyte swap file, for example. With object storage, that swap file would change 1,000 times a minute, which would mean every minute we would have 1,000 terabytes of data, which would fill up our RAID arrays, cost a fortune. And therefore, we can't use object storage in an environment where the data changes. So let's talk about how object storage works, and then we'll talk about use cases for it. Object storage works by taking in the file or some data and breaking it down into an object. Now, when this data is broken down into an object, what we have is information about that data, which is called metadata. Now, this metadata, which is information about the data, gives us some extremely enabling things. For one thing, this metadata enables us to search for part of the object and not have to pull the entire object down. Run queries on our data to learn information based upon our data. And it works very nicely by integration into a big data environment because of that metadata and the ability to run things. Now, you must understand that object storage, when we talk about how it works, it's not traditional storage. It's not hierarchical storage. It's really like a database. It is completely flat storage. And what we have in our object storage environment is we have our data and a database pointer to that data. And because we're dealing with data and a database pointer to that data, we can run SQL queries on our data, which means analysis of our data. Now, I previously mentioned to you that object storage can't be used or mounted by systems because the way it works. So it's good for write once, read many times. Let me give you an example, etc., etc. So, for example, if I wanted to distribute software, object storage is perfect. If I want to back up and archive my data, object storage is kind of perfect. So that's why object storage can be used in a big data environment. Now you know what it is, how it works, and why we use it. James, that's the kind of answer you need to have for every piece of technology: load balancers, block storage, networking, BGP, everything. That's what you need to study. So you need to understand the network and the data center so you can explain what is the tech, how does the tech work, why to use it. But also remember, you're going to have to prove that you're CXO relevant. You've got good sales skills, good leadership skills, good emotional intelligence, good ROI modeling ability, that you're energetic, enthusiastic, passionate, technically competent, trustworthy, a good team player, and a good leader. That's what you need to study. No, not how to do stuff. Good question, and good luck on that interview. VNHG, how do you increase your emotional intelligence? VNHG, please do the work in our course. You are one of our students. What is emotional intelligence? The ability to control your emotions and the ability to manage other people's emotions. That's what it is. So normally, and we love the Goleman training, the Daniel Goleman work, and we use a lot of their things. But what's it really about? Managing your emotions and other emotions. So, for example, we've got some cognitive behavior therapy that I'd like you to do that will teach you how to control your emotions. CBT is used by Olympians, Navy SEALs, and it's widely used in the medical community, which is where I learned it. Also, try some form of self-control, self-modification. And I don't care whether it's yoga, meditation, or breathing, you've got to learn how to control your emotions. Now then there's the social skills of this. There's the body language skill reading of this, which again, you have access to this training. Somebody looks like this. It's not the time to ask for something. Now you might say, hey, Mike, looks like you're having a challenging day. Can I help you? Mike, how are you today? Do you need any help? Oh, yes, I do. Note the change. So it's really about being empathetic and learning empathy. It's really about learning how to ask the right open-ended questions. It's knowing how angry to get when you need to get angry and what's appropriate for the time. It's all about learning saving other people's feelings, teaching them how to save face. So I do recommend reading Daniel Goleman's book, in Emotional Intelligence. I think it's terrific. But at the same time, I also want you to do our stuff, which is specific and proprietary, and it's based upon my 20 years of studying emotional intelligence, which comes mostly from medicine, as well as psychology, sociology, and performance improvement. So please do ours, VNHG, and you'll be in good shape, especially since you're our student anyway. Chris, go to the next one, please. Hussein, is it still doable if you want to learn the cloud at 47? Of course it is. And it's going to be much easier for 47 than if you were 12 or 21. And here's the reason why. We've got a lot of life experience at 47. I'm 48, by the way. And we've trained lots of people older than that. If you've got the right skills, you're good. And if you're older, you have a little experience in life. Maybe you've had a job. Maybe you've been a manager. Maybe you've had to sell. Maybe you've had to present. Maybe you've had children, which you had to lead. Maybe you were a coach. All that life experience is so valuable. So Hussein, yes, of course you can. Of course you can. Of course you can. I work with 60-year-olds. You're not too old. You're the perfect age. If you want to move into something, just do it. Your past does not define your future. Your age does not define your future. What defines your future? What's in your mind, what's in your heart, and how hard you're willing to work. So work hard, study hard. Go build whatever job you want. I knew somebody that was 55 years old that went to medical school and became a doctor. Now, that took them 12 years, but they became a doctor, and they became a real good one. And that's how they spent their retirement. They loved it. So, of course, it's doable. Of course it is. You can do anything you desire as long as you work hard enough. When I was practicing medicine, I went straight to the networking. It was no big deal. I mean, it was hard work, but I did it. You can do anything you want. Your past does not define your future. What you ate last night does not affect what you do today. So go out there, conquer your dreams, Hussein, and go get hired. You want us to train you? We'd love to train you and get you hired. You want to do it on your own? Fine, but just follow your dreams. As Mark Twain said, if you make your vocation your vacation, you'll never work a day in your life. I used to practice internal medicine, which I liked, but I love tech. When I switched to tech 25 years ago, I've never worked a day in my life. Now, I put in some 60 and 80-hour weeks, but I've never worked a day in my life. I got paid to do my love, my hobbies. So it was fun. So of course you can do it. Ken Sherman, do I think the Cisco architect is beneficial for the cloud architect? Ken, is a rule. I don't think any certifications are beneficial for the architect. I think the CCNP is a good one. I think the Google Professional Cloud Architect or the Azure Solution Architect Expert or the Professional Cloud Architect is good. So is it going to be helpful? Look, any Cisco architecture exam will be helpful. But remember, too many certifications, you don't get hired and your salary gets less. No more than 2 certifications on your resume. 3 if you really want to push it. Any more than that, you reduce your employability and lower your salary, which is not the goal. This is not a job where you take 10 certifications to get hired. This is a job where you take 10 certifications and I remove them from your resume when you can't get hired. So don't go cuckoo on the certification. Instead, business acumen, leadership skills, sales skills, executive presence, emotional intelligence, ROI modeling, etc., etc. Those are your skills. Get 10 certifications and you'll have a great engineering career. But you won't have an architect career. Architect is a business executive that knows technology and how to leverage technology for performance improvement, not a techie. That's why people don't get architect jobs. If they do these certifications, and that's their training. If the job is design, present, and sell, and somebody's doing cert, they're not learning their job, they're learning somebody else's job. Who do you want to find that plane, Ken? The person that's an expert at their job or somebody else's job? That's why it matters. So no, I don't think it's going to help you. Now, if you did the CCIE or the CCDE, yeah, that would help you. Because even the CCIE is more of an architecture certification, and the CCDE is a completely good architecture certification. They're the only 2 certifications that I think will really help you. But no, you don't need to read 75,000 pages of networking. But if you want to do it, the CCIE or the CCDE are the 2 best certifications in the world. They will get you a job in and of themselves just having that. Not really an architect job, because remember, we design, present, and sell. You got to have the business acumen, but 2 best certifications in the world. VNHG, tough question. How would you handle an envious supervisor who thinks they should be the architect of the project you're implementing? Well, VNHG, you won't be implementing anything as an architect. You'll be designing, presenting, and selling. So it's your leadership skills. It's your sales skills. It's your emotional intelligence to make that person not envious. It's your executive presence. Those are the skills. It's your leadership skills that you use to manage these situations. This is not a tough situation. This happens every day. That's why these jobs are not about the tech. They're about the leadership. You know what? If you come to class today, we'll address some of those things in class today because I think it's really great. This is leadership. These are the difficult conversations which we have to do periodically. This is why you need so much emotional intelligence and empathy, because a supervisor may be envious. Absolutely. Especially if you make more money than the supervisor, which happens a lot of the times if you're really good at what you do. So yes, that is critical emotional intelligence, empathy training. Let's do some in class at noon today. Chris, if you want to go to the next one, that was a great question. Actually, let me tell you about this. We currently are offering 30% off of all of our programs for a short period of time. We had a sale, but I was out for a couple of weeks, and I knew that not everybody had a chance to speak and ask questions. So we've extended our 4th of July sale until the 11th. And it's on everything. Our Cloud Architect Career Development programs, the main program and the basic program, the Cloud Engineer program, our Tech Interview Mastery program, and our Tech Career Accelerator program. Whereas if you're trying to accelerate your career or get promoted, it's the perfect course for you. So 30% off on everything. Then Chris, if you want to go bring in the next question. What should be the depth of T for Cloud Architect? Tech, I don't know what T means. So is T related to time or some other factor? If you could please translate that into something that's not a letter, I'd love to answer your question. Mickey, I have an account with both AWS and Azure where I can deploy a virtual machine. The thing you don't know is what relevant labs to do with them. Here's the key. I think you should build the virtual machine on a server and learn what it really is. And Mickey, which career do you want to do? Because if you want to be an architect, there are no relevant labs like that. These are, so I mean, I don't know what career you want. Architects do not touch the technology. Now, granted, if you were our student, you'd have about 25 labs to do on AWS. You'd have about 25 labs on Azure. But here's the labs that are going to get you hired. And all my students do these labs, all of them. And look, we do the same 25 and the same silly, what do you call it, Azure labs and AWS labs that everybody does. In TechFinny, you're going to have to tell me a whole lot more what you mean by a T-shaped curve, because I have no idea what you need. So please translate that into something that isn't human speak so I can work with you. Something that's not math speak. Okay, please communicate it in a full sentence what you're actually talking about, because I still have no idea what you mean by horizontal and vertical depth. So here's the thing. Here's the labs that are going to get you hired, and all of our students do these. This is what works. So if you're with us, you will use our servers. If you're not with us, you can buy a server. It's going to cost you about $2,000, while our course only costs you $700. I don't really care where you do these labs, but do these labs on this server. And when you buy the server, it needs to be a Xeon system. It's going to need a minimum of 16 cores, a minimum of 128 gigs RAM, and a minimum of 3 SSD drives in RAID 0 or an NVMe drive. So it's going to cost you about $2,000. It used to cost about $1,000, then with inflation, about up to $1,500, and recently with supply chain shortages and inflation, now about $2,000. Of course, our course is $700. You can use ours or use it. Okay. On this server, set up server virtualization the hard way. Install VMware ESXi and get used to it, or use ours. Then build some Docker and Kubernetes containers the hard way. Hard way, meaning not by clicking 2 buttons on the cloud. That's irrelevant training. Next, set up a file server with NFS. Then set up a file server with server message block. Then build a firewall. Then build a VPN concentrator. And no, you're not going to be able to do most of these things in the cloud because they won't let you do nested virtualization. Then, when you're done that, build an Active Directory server and learn how authentication systems work. Then, when you're done that, set up the Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP stack, the LAMP stack on real systems. And when you're done that, design and build your own cloud. You heard me, build your own cloud. And here's why. I got somebody that's got 1 million certifications and no background experience or capabilities whatsoever, but they've got certifications that like, hey, I set up an S3 bucket and I made a website. And I look at them and say, yeah, but my 12-year-old could do that too. Now you go build your own cloud and you're in there. And I have a lot of experience, but I've designed built my own cloud from scratch. Huh? Tell me about that. Well, I've designed an OpenStack cloud, a Nutanix cloud. I set up the cloud storage, the cloud networking, the cloud load balancers, the cloud databases. I designed an entire cloud. Now you're getting hired, assuming you've got the leadership skills, sales skills, executive presence, emotional intelligence, etc. But those are tech labs to do. All these worthless labs that are out there on Git, don't do them. They're not going to help you if you want to be an architect. Now, if you want to be an engineer, I can tell you what you need to know, but you didn't mention the career that you actually want. So those would be the things that I would recommend you do to learn how to actually be hireable and know something. Things that are going to force you to know it. Because look, I taught an 8-year-old how to configure an EC2 instance in less than 3 minutes. And it was real cute. She click, EC2 is what she said. But nobody's paying you $200,000-$300,000 a year to do something that an 8-year-old can do in 3 minutes. So those are the things. Telling me, knowing more about available service for a solution or knowing more in depth about a solution, I still don't understand what you're saying. I really have no idea what you're trying to ask me. Is it possible for you to write the sentence simply in plain language so I can answer you? I really want to help you. And Chris, can you understand or interpret that? Or translate that?
I cannot. There's too much ambiguity to it. Okay. I really don't know what they're asking.
I don't either.
I could assume, based off that last one, that they're asking, do I need to know the name of a service and how it works, or do I actually need to understand the underlying fundamentals? That's what my assumption, but I don't know if that's what they're actually.
And I'm going to ask that question, which we don't know if it's right or not. And I will tell you, as an architect, the ability to communicate is the most critical skill we have. So if we got it wrong by interpretation, and here's the thing, when we interpret, we make errors. And that's why the most critical skill for the cloud architect is actually communication. And that's why we're not engineers. But here's the thing. If you only know the name of a service and how to configure that service, that's worthless knowledge. Because we need to design the systems, which means we need to know how the systems work, which means just reading AWS documentation is going to be meaningless to you. And here's the reason why. They don't tell you the underlying technology. You need to know how it works, especially when, for example, you start looking at these kind of things. So, for example, AWS issued a major press release a year ago. We now allow east-west routing. Now, I saw so many people excited by that were the certified people. I saw it, and about 50 of my CCI buddies said it and said, AWS now allows something we did at Cisco at 1985. And I said, yeah, that's their new press release. Now, I saw a principal architect, which clearly didn't know networking, at AWS a week ago saying, we now allow IPsec over direct connection. This is huge, huge, huge. Now, to be fair, I did that in 1999. It's not huge. It was huge in 1999, but 1999 wants its technology back, AWS. So the key is you don't need, what you can learn in a certified solution architect professional is just the name of a service and how to configure it. You can't design anything like that. Nothing, zero. You need to know the inner workings of how it works. How do you do performance tuning on a car's engine if you don't know how an engine works? You can't do it at all. How do you design an airplane if you don't know about lift and coefficients of friction and vectors and weight and airfoils? You can't. Now, you could fly the plane without knowing those things. That's what a techie does. That's what an engineer does. But an architect designs the plane. And you can't do that without a lot of auto-analytical understanding, frictions, lift, etc. So we need to go deep, 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 deep in how it works, not how to do it. So no, there's nothing in these certifications about how to do it. It's all about how it works, how it works, how it works. So yeah, we got to need to know a lot of how it works. How to do it is completely irrelevant for us. So hopefully, it sounds like Chris and I interpret your things. You need to have deep, deep, deep knowledge on how it works, not how to do it. So for example, I design a lot of BGP architectures. I've read 20,000 pages of BGP. That's the depth that I need to do that, to design it. Now, if I just wanted to configure it, I could take a CCNP bootcamp 2 weeks later and configure it. But that's not architect knowledge, that's engineer knowledge. That's more admin knowledge, even than engineering knowledge. But still, the point is no, you need to know how everything works in depth. And that's why certifications won't get anybody hired. Because what they do is they don't tell you how it works at all. In fact, they hide all the technology in the certifications. I actually saw a certification provider that was describing EC2. Now, it was written by an AWS sales rep that the person hired, but here's the thing. It was 16 pages about how great EC2 was and how legendary and changing it was. No, maybe it was back in 1995 or 90 or 2000 or 2002 when VMware did it. But now it's not. It's the same old technology. But this was 10 pages of garbage and fluff about how great it is. That's the thing. You got to know what it is. Now, can you imagine going to a customer to talk about their $100 million architecture and be like, "Hi, I'm all certified. Look at all these great things and exciting things." And they said, "Yeah, you mean the stuff we've been doing for 25 years?" They'd laugh and send you home. And I see it happening all the time. The cloud is nothing more than a network in a data center that's been virtualized. The first cloud I worked on was Frame Relay, and it was in 1997. The next cloud I worked on was ATM, and that was in 1999. The cloud I worked on after that was specified in RFC 2547. It was the BGP MPLS cloud. The cloud I worked on after that was around 2001. It was the VPLS cloud. Clouds aren't new. I mean, networking people have been working with them for decades. Well, there was the ISDN cloud too. It was all kinds of funny stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So learn the tech, and then you can do the certification in a day, and you'll be good to go. Maybe 2 days, maybe a week, or et cetera, et cetera. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. And while we're at it, I see that the reminder for me is telling me that the 30% 4th of July sale is extended. So if you want to get cloud hired, sign up now. Abhishek, sir, I want to join your course. I am not a graduate, but I am working in IT for 1 year. I have given AWS Cloud Architect Associate that you failed once. Should I give it again or join your course? Well, here's the thing. If you take our course, the certification will be nothing. Something you can do in a weekend with a practice test. Or you could spend the next 3 to 4 months trying to pass the certification. And then when you're done that, then we could train you completely. But I'd rather do it all at the same time. If you know what the technology is, how it works, and what we use it, the certification exams are nothing. It's only hard when you don't know. So I'd rather train you properly from the beginning, to be there. So keep that in the back of your mind. Yes, training our course would be much better than wasting your time doing a certification, only for us to have to teach you how to unlearn everything you learned on your own from scratch. We'll teach you the right way so you don't get any bad habits. So you don't have to waste your time doing it, and then you don't have to waste your time unlearning it. We'll train you properly, and those exams will be nothing for you. So that's what I recommend. Work with us. We'll train you properly, and then do the certification. I had a student recently that asked me about certification, and I said, look, I don't eat cake, but most people tell me they don't eat icing out of a jar. They eat cake, and they like the cake with or without the icing. So keep this in the back of your mind. Get the cake before you do the certifications, which is the icing. Got to get the cake first. Good question, Abhishek. And then Chris, if you Chris, if you want to go to the next one. Ken Sherman, what have you personally seen and understand the biggest challenge of cloud architects? What is a real life case study? The biggest challenge of cloud architects I've ever seen are people that tried to study the tech, and didn't have the sales skills, leadership skills, executive presence, emotional intelligence, ROI modeling, etc., and they get fired immediately because they can't do the job. That's the biggest issue, is lack of business acumen, lack of leadership skills, lack of sales skills, lack of executive presence, lack of emotional intelligence, and lack of networking skills. Those networking skills are pretty critical. Because here's what happens. The people are techie, and then they go meet with the CEO, and they're talking about EBS and S3 and EC2, and they get literally kicked out of the room. They get fired instantly because you can't communicate like that to the CEO. So it's almost exclusively what I've seen in my case is somebody doesn't have the business background for the job. They went techie, and now they're in an executive position. They have no executive skills. They somehow skated past the interview, somebody didn't notice, and then they are fired real fast. That's the things that I've seen. The other challenges that I've seen in years of architects is there was somebody that tried to do hybrid work where they thought they could be an architect and an engineer at the same time. And go out tonight, Ken. Go look at the sky, look at the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, the sun, the moon, the stars, look at it all. And then take some binoculars out and zoom in on the moon. And what are you going to see? Parts of the moon and none of the rest of the sky. And that's where the biggest issues architects have. They want to touch the tech. And in the process of taking the tech, they lose focus on the big picture and everything comes crashing down. Two biggest issues I've ever seen. And the only mistake that I ever made that almost got me fired early in my architect career is I was a CCIE and I loved touching the tech. I was an architect. I designed some BGP thing and I went and configured it. I configured it properly. But what did I miss? All the other stuff that was going on in the network had an outage, and I got brought into my manager's office and he said, Mike, if you weren't the best damn network engineer and architect I've ever seen, you'd be fired right now. But I know you will never touch the tech again, and you will focus on your job and not somebody else's. Yes, sir. And that was the beginning of my career. Those two biggest problems I've ever seen. Good questions, Ken. Chris, let's go to the next one. No passive interface. What are my favorite books to learn networking deeply? They were as follows. Stevens, TCP/IP. Routing TCP/IP Volumes 1 and 2 from Jeff Doyle and Jennifer Cannell. Internet Routing Architectures from Bassam Halabi. MPLS and VPN Architectures from Pepanajak. I would say they're a good start. But realistically speaking, it's not about what's in the books, even though they're good books. When I did my CCIE exam, how I really learned is I read the RFCs. See, what happens is there's a request for comment that come out of the Internet Engineering Task Force, and this stuff is all free. And I participated in some of these working groups as well. If you read the RFCs, you understand the specifications for everything. And 20 years ago, when the CCIE exam was hard, when I took mine, back when it was a 2-day exam, before too many people failed, and Cisco decided to make it easy because they were tired of people failing and getting angry and wanting to recommend Juniper, then we all read the RFCs. So those books I gave you are good books, but read the actual specifications. Every CCIE, CCDE needs to read the specs. I'll give you an example. About 20 years ago, I was interviewing for a principal architect position. And it wasn't like normal companies where they wanted the principal architects to be 2/3 business, 1/3 tech. This was, in those days, a techie company. And I was actually interviewed on BGP by the VP of software engineering that went to IIT. His brother went to IIT. And for some reason, he decided that he was going to code the BGP implementation himself as the VP. I don't know why, along with his team. He asked me from the beginning, he asked me BGP questions for an hour. And every one of those questions he asked me came out of the RFC. What's in this header? What's in this message? Describe this part of the finite state machine to me. Describe this, describe this, describe this. I answered about 60 questions, and I finally said, I don't know. And he laughed, and he said, thank you. He said, I've never done a better BGP interview in my life. And he said, I was waiting to see what happened when I asked you something you didn't know. Were you going to lie to me, in which case I couldn't hire you because I couldn't trust you, or were you going to be honest and say I didn't know? He was like, I like you. We became good friends 20 years later, and he's done so much for the networking industry. So they're my favorite things. RFC, RFC, RFC. While we're at it, join us on Thursday for the How to Get Your First Cloud Job webinar. I want to do everything we can to help you get hired. Nelly, considering your background, you just want one certification as per your advice and you want to aim high and for all. You're going for the CCDE. I think that is an extremely good certification. Now, here's the thing. The cloud is a network and a data center. So in the CCDE, you will learn to be an expert at network design, but probably not data center design. So the CCDE is great. All the architectural principles that you will learn for that is exactly what you're going to do in the cloud, because the cloud is nothing more than a virtual network and a data center, but you're still going to need to learn load balancers, because that's not part of networking, firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, storage, airing, networks, etc., etc. So if there's still a CCDE in the data center, that would be your perfect one, because that'll be inclusive of network and data center technologies. If not, the CCDE will give you the perfect tech background to be an architect. Perfect. Just get the network data center, just get the data center knowledge. But still remember this: leadership skills, sales skills, executive presence, emotional intelligence, ROI model based acumen is critical. Without that, it's still not possible to get hired. But you get those things together and you will be fantastic. So I think it is the best certification you could do. Best one. Best one. Having said that, I'm not sure if the CCIE has more marketability, because people know what it is. So you might actually be better off with the CCIE, even though that's less of an architecture certification, because it's got that brand with it. But if I had to do one, and if I was going to ask for which certification would teach me best, it would be the CCDE. That's actually an extremely good certification, the Cisco Certified Design Expert. And what makes these exams good? They're not worthless paper tests. It's not like you get a multiple choice exam and you can pick it or get a practice test and buy a copy of the practice test, which is the real test. Here you got to go design something in front of a proctor to make point that they get to see that you know how to do it. It is a practical exam. It is an excellent exam. And these exams are highly regarded. Chris, you can bring in the next one. You're welcome, non-passive interface. You're more than welcome, Isa. I never found the RFCs had a sense of humor, but I loved working on them and reading them. But I don't have a good sense of humor myself, to be fair. Quick Strike 21. Hey, Mike, how successful has the Cloud Engineer program been? Any stories? Here's the thing. We had our Cloud Architect program for about a year and a half, and our students get hired every single day of the week. We launched our Cloud Engineering program approximately a month and a half ago. So we haven't had any graduates yet because, it's going to take students, 6 to 8 months to graduate from one of these programs, because it's a lot harder to become a cloud engineer than a cloud architect, even though the salary is lower. It's much easier for me to get somebody a cloud architect job, which pays more than a cloud engineer job. But I can still get people cloud engineer jobs easily. And here's the thing. It takes longer in the cloud engineering program, because in the cloud engineering program, we've got to teach you the code, at least Python. Then we got to teach you Linux and how to administer Linux. Then we got to teach you some infrastructure as code in that program. And then we got to teach you hands-on. Now, the reality is when you have a job with no experience, in order to get hired, the better your sales skills, leadership skills, executive presence, emotional intelligence, and interviewing capabilities, the more likely to be hired and the faster you'll be promoted. So we're not going to have any success stories in our cloud engineer program for approximately 6 months. And then we'll have lots and lots and lots of them. You want to be a cloud engineer? We can make you a great cloud engineer. But understand it takes longer to become a cloud engineer. And that's why when people say, hey, should I work as a cloud engineer first? I'm like, well, do you want to be a cloud engineer? If you want to be a cloud engineer, work as a cloud engineer. But you don't need to, because the cloud architect designs present themselves. The cloud engineers build. Completely opposite jobs. For those people that love engineering, our cloud architect engineer program is going to really help you. But cloud engineers build, hands-on. Architect, design, present themselves. So we will have lots of successes in that program, but not until the time has passed where the students have been able to get through the program, which we only launched about a month and a half ago. So it's going to take many more months before you see success stories there. But if you want us to help you, I've got 20 years experience helping people get hired, and you'll do very, very well. Okay, so let me close on these things. Next week, well, in 2 weeks, we have a completely free AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate Bootcamp. It's going to be live. You'll be able to ask questions, and it's going to be so much fun. Please register. The link is in the description below. Please join us next week for the BGP workshop and the subnetting workshop. It's going to be fun. Critical education for the cloud architect. We look forward to working with you on that. On Thursday next week, we have our completely free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. I want to make sure that you are completely capable of that. So understand that. And then lastly, if you really want to get hired right now, take advantage of our 30% off pricing. I want to make sure that you get hired. It works for our cloud architect, cloud engineer, tech career accelerator, interview program. I want you getting cloud hired. So now you know of all the things that are going on. I don't think we have any more questions as it stands right now. Chris, do we have any more? And I know I have to end within the next 5 minutes anyway. So, okay, Quick Strike 21. I got to ask you a question. Which would you matter to you more? Getting hired or getting a certificate? Now, of course, you'll get certificates for the Azure Solution Architect Expert or the Google Professional Cloud, or the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional. And sure, we can give you a certificate, but anybody can give you a certificate. We can get you hired. So what's your goal? A piece of paper or a great high-paying career where you have the great life for the rest of your life? That's what we do. Our competition does paperwork and certificates, and people get tons of certificates and they sit around like trash. We get you hired. Our opinion, your job offer is your certificate. So again, which would you like? $150,000 job or a piece of paper? Choice is yours. Our opinion is that when you get hired, that's your certificate of completion. When you have a real career, when you're an executive or an engineer or an architect, that's your certificate. And then after that, once you get the first job, anybody will hire you. So that's our version of a certificate. Sure, you want a piece of paper? We can give you one, but it's just a piece of paper. What we worry about is hired. That's our version of a certificate. We are performance-based. We are outcome-based. We are not based on anything else. So hope you all had a wonderful time. I'll be back answering your questions on Monday. Get cloud hired, cloud promoted. Yeah, like I said, we can give you a certificate of completion at the end of the program if you'd like one. Some people ask and we can give it. But the real issue is we want to get you hired. That's our concern. So thank you all. We hope you have a wonderful, wonderful experience here. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. My students that are here, I'm going to see in class today, and we have a leadership class today that's going to be fun, 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 fun. Talk to you soon. Cloud hired, everybody.